All right, so we'll be looking at the 106th Surah, Quraysh. And so if, Aisha, if you could lead us in Fatiha, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Okay. Thank you. So this is one of those sessions where we'll see passages where I keep asking, did he really just say that? So let's begin with this surah, and Omar can take us through the verses and then the translation.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف صدق الله العظيم. For the covenant of security and safeguard enjoyed by the Quraysh, the covenant covering journey by winter and summer, let them adore the Lord of this house, who provided them with food against hunger and with security against fear of danger.
Thank you. Yes, so another very short surah with many pages in the Futuhat, and we'll look at only two of the places that Ibn Arabi takes us here. And the first place that we go to is titled Ulfa, and so that's based on the beginning words of the first two verses. So ilafa, and so ilafa, and this is from Alif, so A-L-I-F, Alif, the letter A, but the letter A, Alif, also means these other words, being intimate, cleaving, and being familiar, reunion after separation, coming together in a covenant or an alliance. And so this word Alif and Ilaf, the description that Ibn Arabi uses for that is ulfa. And ulfa is this coming together, this cleaving, this adhering to, reunion, alliance, and these words. So we'll look at that one, and then we'll look at one of the last ones, which, well, and just to give you the preview that we won't actually look at, the second verse also has this winter and spring or summer, and that has to do with directions. So in the chapter that Ibn Arabi writes, he looks at the directions of the substitutes, the abdal, and he looks at, then for the third verse, this title brings him to Mecca, and he tells us what you see when you are at the house of the cherisher, the Rabb Hadil Bayt. Okay. So, and as he always does, to begin the chapter, he gives us a poem. And this poem is one which not only takes us through the entire chapter, it also might bring us insights that are not necessarily available in the chapter itself. I've asked Klaus to read this for us.
None enters here except the sight of being who is flush against the image of who. You will see, at the moment one is seen, a guest alighting to visit him in the enclosed place of who. The guest will recount stories about what has been learned, flowing there, flush against the coursing of who. The true selects you as a mirror for who. So this is why you increase in the flushing rushes of who. God prohibits you as a notification for you that this prohibition comes from the jealousy of who. At the moment he fences off what is his, absolutely, made far beyond the confounding process of you. The one forbidden from the fruit eats. So there appears a step level of food concerning the private part of his. He saw, at the moment he saw her, that she was a banquet carried to his table from the protective near neighbors of who.
Beautiful. The last two stanzas here, or the verses here, that's about the move from the garden to this world. And so by the process of approaching the tree, Adam and Eve are sent down to this world where they have their kingdom. And so this is, Ibn Arabi says that when they were told by Satan to say, you should eat from this tree because God wants to give you eternal life if you eat from this tree, and he's going to give you a kingdom to rule over. And so Adam and Eve, because they know that their cherisher is just someone to do that, they go ahead and they approach the tree and eat. And then indeed what happens? They are given eternal life, and they are given the kingdom of everything to rule over. So this is how Ibn Arabi explains that this was actually a very beautiful opinion of their cherisher. And this flushing rushes of who is about intoxication. So when you're selected as a mirror, you have this leaping intoxication, and it's like a flush and a rush. And so this poem is very, very dense. It has beautiful imagery all throughout. So we'll see how we'll be looking at this, what it means to be ulfa, this adhering to and cleaving to. Now here we go to the map, and so Ibn Arabi is helping us see the imagery of the Sūrah, the enclosed area of the Quran, is a map, and we explore this map. And he tells us, if you go here at this verse, you'll find these things. If you go here at this other verse, you'll find these other things. And this one is just amazing. We've been looking up from December. We've seen the light of Muhammad in pre-eternity. So this light of Muhammad in pre-eternity comes into the world in the messenger and prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in bodily form. And so we watch his ascension, and in his ascension, he receives and learns all the things that he needs to know to be the bodily light of Muhammad. And then we then see that Ibn Arabi says that following him, there's someone who also then conveys this message in a different mode. So the message of the light of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is pre-eternity into the eternity. And then Ibn Arabi says there's only four kinds of creatures. There is the messenger, the prophet, the friend, and the faithful. So the bodily message of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is messenger and prophet. And then the friend is someone like Muhammad ibn Arabi, who then conveys what this light of Muhammad gave to the bodily Muhammad. It's transmitted then through the friend mode, the awliyas, the walis, the peers, and that's the friend mode. And then there's the fourth mode, which we are, or most of us are, some of you are, in the third mode, but the fourth mode for everyone else, this is the mode of conveying that same message and reaching to that same message. In the reaching to the same message, Ibn Arabi writes about coming to this place in this surah and what you find. So he says, and learn that this alighting place, so that's Surah 106, when you enter it, you will meet and gather with a group of the messengers, the blessings of God be upon them. So this is how Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he went on the ascension, when he was taken on that ascension, he met with the messengers. And now Ibn Arabi is saying, we go to this alighting place and we meet with messengers. And it's all in the second person singular, which is just amazing. You will gain benefit from their tasting, which is specific to them. So the tasting that the messengers and the prophets have, we cannot have that tasting directly because we're not messengers and prophets. But we will get benefit from their tasting, and we will get knowings which we had not had. You will have a kashf, this disclosure, just as they have a tasting. For you, from them, a knowledge will be obtained of indications and signs, and nothing will be hidden from you. There is nothing in the earth and nothing in the heaven when he shines radiantly here to you, except it will be distinguished, and you will recognize it, while another will be ignorant of what was not obtained in this alighting place. So we are invited to this alighting place. When we reach there, we gather and meet with the prophets and messengers, and we gain benefit from the tastings that they have, which are inaccessible to us through kashf, disclosure. So the importance of this alighting place, here we see that, and it's going to be based on the title that he gives, ulfa, what it means, ulfa, this cleaving together. So what he'll say now with this cleaving together, let's look at it. Let me slowly work through this chapter on this idea of ulfa, the title of ulfa. So he says, there is no ulfa, this union, cleaving together, bringing together after separation of two, except when there is a correlation between them. So this one cannot meet with this one unless there's a correlation. So unless they have a relationship, and they have to have a relationship, or this one cannot meet with this one. So this one has to be like, related to, correlated to this other one. So the alighting place of ulfa is a combining correlation, bringing together the true and the creation. So there has to be something that links and correlates and relates the true to creation, or the two cannot meet. She is the image which the human being was created flesh against. So in order to meet this creation is made an image flush against the true, so that the true and creation can meet. And others than the human being, and this is why no one in creation claims divinity but the human being. So because we're created on this image and we look divine, therefore we think sometimes or often that we are God, because we look divine, and we look divine so that there can be a relationship. And other than the human beings, the stones and the trees, they are claimed by us to be divine, but they do not themselves claim to be divine. So that's why we think we're divine, because we're created in order to be able to be related to the one who's looking at us. And in all creation, there is no one who owns another except the human being. And only the human being owns. Yes, other species, do not own anything. He Exalted says, in confirming that, yes, humanity does own things, ownership for the human being, or what your right hands possess. So this addresses to men, masculine, and then the feminine comes later in that surah. Later in the surah for women owning others of their species. So men own people of their species, women own people of their species. or the ones their second hand feminine plural right hands possess. Mamalakat aimanu hunna. So the ones that the women's hands possess, the ones that the men's hands possess. That tells us that human beings think that they should own and have this idea of ownership of others of their species. And there is, after all, no other side of being for whom slavehood is confirmed except the human being. So someone says, this side of being is the slave of this one. And this is why God made for humanity to free the slave. And he made freeing slaves desirable. And he made the free slave a wala. That's a client, someone who inherits, when someone dies without an heir to inherit. So in order to create in the human being a relationship to haqq, the human being is created flush against an image of haqq, of the divine, and so looks divine. And in order to create a relationship to the one who owns all of the possessions are God's, we are then also given a correlation of owning. And so we need to realize that we are created on the image of the divine, but we are not ourselves divine. And we are created as owners, but because God is an owner, but we ourselves do not own. And therefore we are told, free the slaves. You're not God. Don't worship yourself. Don't let others worship you. Don't you worship others. And so that's to work with this correlation. There has to be a correlation so that the two can meet, but there's a way that we misunderstand this correlation and think that we're God. And so that's why we free the slave and we don't worship God in ourselves or in others. And then the third part of this is that there's no one else except the humanity who takes all of the divine names. So if the humanity can receive all of the divine names, it's very easy to think, oh, that looks like God because you've got all of these divine names. So that's another thing that we have to have the correlation, but we also have to use it the right way. And there is, after all, no other side of being which accepts the being named by the entirety of the divine names except the human beings. From he taught Adam the names, all of them. And one is commended to take on, so to dab yourself with the divine names. This is why Khilafah, that is the Khalifa from behind whom Allah works, and the Niyaba, where you stand in for Allah, are provided and being taught the names, all of them. Humanity is the last configuration created. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, humanity is created. In the cosmos, gathering together all of the truths of the cosmos. And then God abridges the humanity, making the words few, but the meaning all there in this entirety of truth, humanity's kingdom, all of it, and humanity's images. So that I'll give the way to look at this also, if you're used to understanding transcendence and similarity and things like that, that's one way to begin to enter what Ibn Arabi is telling us here. He's saying that the true cannot meet with creation unless there is a similarity, a correlation. And so this correlation is to look divine in the image, is to own, and then is to have all of the names, to be able to do everything that God does. And do all of these three things without ourselves thinking that we're God. So therefore, we're told, don't own, because while you look like an owner, that's God who's the owner. And don't worship yourself or another, because although you look like God, you are not God. And then don't say, hey, I'm God because I have all God's names, adjectives, because you are not, even though you have these names. And so, when we look at, kids draw a picture of God, or people draw a picture of God and, some old man with the beard and all of that kind of thing, we think, oh, that's an anthropomorphism. But you really also have to look at it the other way, and that when God draws us, it's a theomorphism. So when God draws us, he draws his likeness. So it's not maybe so bad that when we draw God, we draw our likeness, because that's what God does. And we've looked at these verses, the Surah, Ikhlas, and other places in Quran, which are leading us to see that all is read twice. When you read the Surah Ikhlas, Qul Huwallahu Ahad, when you read that surah, you read it once for God, you read it once for humanity. And the same way with Laysa kamithlihi shay'un, you read it once for God and once for humanity. And the way Ibn Arabi explains this to us, he says that about transcendence and similarity, if God were only transcendent, we would not recognize God. So if God were only transcendent, then we would not recognize. Because if I say, here I have a detector that detects light. And if there is a light which isn't detected here, it's not a light. And so someone can say that, oh, this light that I'm trying to show you, or this color, is a transcendent color. And then I'll say, well, if it's transcendent, then I can't even recognize it. I can't even see it as a color. And then if God were only similar to us, then we wouldn't be able to recognize God, because then I wouldn't know if you or you or you or you is God, because we're all similar. So I wouldn't know which one is God. Therefore, God has to be transcendent and similar. So transcendent and similar and transcendent. So it has to look just like us, similar, but transcendent, meaning, but not that, not that, not that. And it has to be transcendent, not that, not that, not that, but similar, so that I know that I'm looking at something that's transcendent. So that's how Ibn Arabi, in a sense, he does it in one sentence. In one sentence, he takes centuries of theology and just, here you go, one sentence to explain it. So this is the likeness. And we've looked at that before, I think. Let's go ahead and read it out. So who is the likeness confirmed in the Quran? The likeness which has no likeness. In his word, there is not like his likeness anything. So the one way we read it, there's nothing like him. And the other way we read it is, there is nothing like his likeness. And his likeness, if someone sketches a picture of me, I say, oh, that's a good likeness of me. And so when we are sketched, then God says, that's a likeness of me. And so that's the theomorphism. And so this is how we read verses and surahs twice, once for us, once for God. Okay. And if Aisha could read that poem for us, we'll keep going from there.
The neck of embrace of the Alif, utterly intimate, and the Lam, like two lovers floating through the years like a dream. The leg swirls around the leg which becomes mighty, and there came to me from the two wrapped, entwined a sign, the pulsing heart, as his meaning is in his embrace. There appears to him a bringing out to being and an annihilation.
Yeah. So we looked at that poem, and we were looking at the Lam Alif, which is the picture of Ulfa. The Lam Alif, the L and the A, is the picture of Ulfa. So as the human being is in this vantage position of the three, looking like God in the mirror, owning like God owns all, and then having all the names and adjectives that God has. So as the human being is in this vantage position, there is ulfa between humanity and its cherisher. So the two can meet, because there is a cleaving familiarity, intimacy, and love. Therefore, humanity loves who, and who loves humanity. So this love is possible because there's a correlation between the two parties. This is why it is related that the heaven and the earth, meaning the higher and the lower, and what is in between, is not vast enough for who, while the heart of the faithful slave of taqwa and temerity is vast enough. This is part of the quality of the human being, not part of the quality of the angel. It is only the human being who is distinguished from all by being a place of combination of high and low, and a place of divine image, which is created flush against his image. So learn this. So this is how the correlation occurs. And because there's a correlation, there's love can flow between the one and the other. And then this is the Lam Alif, which entwines the legs one around the other. Okay.
I burst into the flames of love. I become drunk with the mystery of love. True dervish lovers circling the great Effendi banquet of love in the paradise of love. True dervish lovers circling the great Effendi banquet of love in the paradise of love. I am truth, cries the wisest of the wise. My body is consumed in the radiance of love. The light of essence shining from the great Effendi merges me with the Sultan of love. The light of essence shining from the great Effendi merges me with the Sultan of love.
Lost in the shade beyond external form, I am commanding the army of love. Wisdom of Solomon, station of Hazreti Ali flows through me from the circle of love. Wisdom of Solomon, station of Hazreti Ali flows through me from the circle of love.
Okay. Thank you. So this is the alighting place. And when we go there, when Ibn Arabi went there one time, someone who came forth in this blessed alighting place, and we can go there too, is Abu Sa'id al-Kharaz, who died in 890, whereas Ibn Arabi was born in 1165. So this tells us that people passing away is not an obstacle to meeting them and learning from them. He was among the first generations. I heard this from him when I came upon him here myself, and there accrued to me what he had acquired. And this is the one that Ibn Arabi teaches us throughout the Futuhat. How do you recognize the true? Abu Sa'id was asked, how do you recognize the true? By the bringing together of opposites. Then he recited, and who is the first, the last, the outward, the inward? And so we've looked at that circle of the loop, which is a all one surface. And so its opposites are all inside its oneness. So if I start on one part and I say, this is the outward, then as I move along, at some point I realize I'm now inward. And I continue and I'm now outward, inward and outward in the same surface, because there's only one surface in this strip. And the first and the last, if I say this is the first, let me go look for the last. When I get back to the first, there's the last. So put a mark on the circle, say this is the first. And I say, now I'm looking for the last. Where's the last? Where's the last? Where's the last? Oh, here's the last. The first is the last. And so this is the single entity. And the single entity has in it this bringing together of opposites. If you look at these glass spheres, there's a surface on the outside, and then there's an inside. So this glass sphere has an inside. And if I, okay. And so this glass sphere has an outward and has an inward. So if I break the glass sphere into pieces, I say, okay, now I can find the inside. And I pick up the first piece. Oops, the first piece has an outside and an inside. So I said, well, let me break that one. Break that one. Oh, here's the outside, here's the inside. No, here's a piece which has the outside and the inside. And so in that way, we come from one breath, one soul, and one soul, and each of us contains that one soul. And each of us is one in holding together the opposites. So you can't put all the outward people over here and all the inward people over here. You can't put all of the red ones over here and the blue ones over there, because we all contain the same, because we all come from the one. So that's the teaching that Ibn Arabi received from him, who had passed away centuries before. And we go to that alighting place, and we then look to meet Abu Sa'id as well. Now, remember from last week, we had all of these letters that join with the Aleph. And these letters join with the Aleph, and you can't tell what's the letter and what's the Aleph. And so Ibn Arabi says there also are special people who look exactly the same with all of these letters. They cannot be distinguished. Yet one of them is acting from God. One of them is a Khalifa, and then one of them is not. And they look exactly the same. So you can't, because the shape is the same, you can't tell which is which. And from my notes, let me make sure we have all of this. So Khalifa, and we looked at that as the one who acts from behind you. And so we have, and Kamal is perfectly complete. So late in the Futuhat, Ibn Arabi is asked directly, how can I know if I am perfectly complete? And it's such a beautifully bold question. And Ibn Arabi says, bless you for asking that one, because everyone else would have said, how dare you think that you're something special? So he says, bless you for saying that, asking that question. He says, you'll know that you're perfectly complete. And then he gives some examples. And then he asks, and if you want to know if you're a Khalifa, that is a caliph or someone from behind whom God acts, then Ibn Arabi says, you'll know that if when you do something, something else happens. So if you push something left, it goes right. And if you push something right, it goes left. And then if you push something, nothing happens. And then if you do nothing, it moves. So if that's happening to you, then you are a Khalifa. Then you are one behind whom God is acting. And what's interesting, what we've been saying the last few weeks, is that you won't know which person is doing that, because they will look exactly like everyone else. This hand will be God's hand or my hand, and it will look exactly the same, whether it's my hand or God's hand. So, and the Aleph is not distinguished from the Lam in order to strengthen the Ulfa. So the true and the creation are not distinguished so as to make more Ulfa, more connection, more love and intimacy. So the hand that's mine and the hand that's God are made to be so indistinguishable, so that there can be this intimacy and cleaving of the divine to humanity. Now, remember, we started in the mist, and then that's when desire arises. And the desire is to see and be recognized. And that desire is to loving someone who's not there yet. So loving someone who's not there yet. And the first one who then is this first constraint, the first constraint of the divine image. And that first constraint is the first teacher. And the first teaching of this teacher is La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. So the first constraint and first teaching is the utterance La ilaha illallah, and then Muhammad is the messenger of God. So it is the same way with the human being. When the true is your hearing and your sight, just as is related in the report, there is a linkage of you and your faculties to the true, and it's the linkage of the lam to the aleph, to the L to the A. This is why in the letters of testimony of oneness, in the phrasing, when you speak them, the lam, which is you, comes first. La ilaha illallah. You say it first. So that means that the first constraint, the light of Muhammad, the pen, says first, La ilaha illallah. So negated by the letter Lam Alif of Ulfa, this cleaving together, is the divinity of every God the ignorant affirms, the one who associates divinity to others besides God, but not you, because you've just said from the first teaching, La ilaha illallah. Thus, this shirk is negated by the letter which embraces the slave and the Lord. Thus, the first statement is from us, we declare that there is no God. Now, as God testifying for himself as being one, he testifies one based on himself and two based on his slave to this effect. So he brings the letter Lam Alif. And so we look at the Lam Alif in the corner here. Based on this leg, there is no God but God. Based on this other leg, there is no God but God. So it comes from you and from the true. Which one is saying that at this moment is not distinguishable. Okay. Now, towards the end of this chapter, when he starts listing things, because things are getting very long and complicated, Ibn Arabi starts making a list of all the things that you see. So it's like he takes the map and then he says, you'll see this pond, you'll see this mountain, you'll see this river. And then he says, and you'll see da, 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 da. He keeps listing. So, and from this alighting place, one knows what the reason is for the passion which is produced in the passionate lover. And to give you the hint, it is, I am a treasure concealed. So when haq is a treasure that's concealed, that is the reason that there is love. And to make someone to love requires a correlation between the two. So Allah makes the correlation between the two as closely as possible, as divinely possible, and it is completely indistinguishable by us. So that's how close it is. And then we'll learn in this alighting place what the linkage is between the passionate lover and the one loved passionately, such that he becomes entangled in him in specific ways apart from another. So this is the question, why you love this, why the one who loves this beloved. You know, he's, why this person is my beloved, and what specific ways have I become entangled in that one? So that entanglement with the one that you love, Ibn Arabi cites one of the places, 3 women have my reins in their hands. So that is, reins are one. And so this person is entwined in one thing, which 3 people have the reins, can grab that rein and pull him. And why he sees his beloved's entity to be the most beautiful compared to ones who are actually more beautiful than his beloved. So why do you think that your beloved is the most beautiful when there are actually some who are more beautiful than your beloved? But this is from the poem, such a beauty, beautiful to every eye is the one you love. Meaning, according to the lover, anyone who sees your beloved must find him beautiful in their opinion, just as he is beautiful in your opinion. So this is a bit of the tyranny of the lover, that everyone he meets, he said, if you don't think my beloved is the most beautiful, then there's something wrong with you, and I'm not going to talk with you anymore. So you should see how my beloved is so beautiful, just the way I see my beautiful, that he is so beautiful. Okay, then, and one learns, okay, then, and then also Ibn Arabi then says this one too, and one learns why love on the part of the human being for the girl or the boy is where one is lost in them and comes to this position which we cited. And this is his poem, I am the one loving, I am the one beloved, I am my darling boy, I am my running girl. And Ibn Arabi is showing us the divine love and nature-based love. So divine love is loving what's not there, and because it's not there, it can't do anything for you. So when Allah loves humanity, which hasn't been created yet, humanity can do nothing for Allah. There's nothing that humanity can do. Can't feed the God, can't worship the God, can't do anything because it's not even there yet. And yet Allah loves this humanity. So this is the mother loving the child before it's born. And that's divine love. And then once the child comes out, then eventually the child then has nature love for the mother, because the child says, you're the one who gives me everything. And so therefore I love you. And that's one kind of love, nature-based love. And then the child might later on have divine love. And that's where you love the mother without whether she is doing things for you or not. And so, and then the mother's love, which is divine before the child's born, and then is divine for a while, may turn into nature-based love. You may at some point, if I say, I'm so proud of my son, then this is Ibn Arabi says in the Arab way, is to say that my child who succeeds and is successful gives me something. So I feel, oh, my child did that. I'm someone great now. So the boy and girl, unlike the child or other people, don't give me anything, can't give you anything in your nature. So therefore it's divine love. And so, so this is how Ibn Arabi helps us see these things. And so we are told that both kinds of love are affirmed by revelation. So the first nature-based love is that the Prophet ﷺ said, love God for what he nourishes you with. So because God nourishes me like the mother, then I love the mother in a nature-based love. But there's also that God will bring out a people. He will love them and they will love him. So God's love comes first. And so this is divine love. So when you have a child that's not born, your love is divine because the child has not had any chance to give your nature anything, good or makes you happy and loving, but you still love, that's divine love. Okay. And now we have this Ilahi from Baki.
Ya Hay, Ya Hay, Ya Hay. What is occurring? This lover's heart, merging the flame of passionate love, soaring and diving, beyond only imagining, becoming pure by this fiery embrace. Oh, sweetly burning heart, this is a way to true love, flowing fire is one's festival. Alhamdulillah, oh, Ajib Ramwali, oh, exacted friend of reality. What is occurring in this lover's heart? The alchemy of divine beauty, transforming longing into ecstasy, transforming veiling into unity, passing beyond matter sea, beyond division, and separation. separation. Alhamdulillah, this Musafirti, oh, exact is mind of reality.
Thank you. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
Joy, I have a question before I start to take others'
Of
questions.
course.
You quoted early on, how do you recognize the true? By bringing together the opposites. Is that why opposites attract in human love?
Yeah, I think there's something there because divine love is very much about opposites. And so the more that we are, we have to be completely like God and we have to be completely unlike God. And the more we can push those apart, the more love there is, the better it gets. And so if God is, is like me, but just better, which is sort of way the kind of conventional way to look at it is, then that's not really the power of love. The powerful love is that God looks completely like me and it's completely not me. And so and as far as part as those can be, as opposite as those can be, that's what we want to see. And then, of course, when we look at the other, we see ourselves. And so we want to see in the other what we can't see in ourselves. And so we can't see what's too close to us. So we bring it to the other, and then we can now finally see it.
Thank you. So first question. So the ulfa is the first constraint?
I haven't looked at it that way. Yeah, the first constraint is the aqal al-awwal, the first intellect or the first constraint. It's putting them together at the ulfa. That is the first image that we have. And the first image is the one leg says there is no God but God, and the other leg says there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the Rasulullah, and so that is the process of ulfa. So it's the first ulfa then. Beautiful. It's a good way of looking at it.
Which chapter is it?
So chapter
106, you said earlier?
Yeah, well, it's Sūrah 106, but the chapter in Futuhat is, let me see if I can, I'll have to find something here. Just a second. 275. 275, and I think it's book 22, 21 or 22, way out there.
Regarding a lighting place in the context of Kash, am I on track intending to see in ordinary souls like us as those revelatory moments mostly fleeting, but we are awestruck when we are unable to see a facet of the integrated truth?
Yes, so this is what's so powerful about what Ibn Arabi is teaching us here, is that he's talking about you and me, and he's talking second person, singular. He's talking to us, and he's saying that here, messengers, prophets, friends, and the faithful, and that's all there is. So we're most of us in this last category, and that is a category which has perfect access to the same places where the messengers and the prophets and the friends go. And so the messenger and prophets are going to this alighting place. We go there and we meet them. And then here's Abu Sa'id al-Kharaz, one of the friends. We go there and we meet him. And so this is this teaching, this conveyance of this message is coming then through all four types of human beings, all four types of people. And so we go there, and I can't have the tasting of a messenger because there are no more messengers, but I can have a kashf, a disclosure of what that tasting is. And so all is open then to us. And then he says that when you get there, all in the heavens and the earth will be visible to you, and you'll see it all and you'll distinguish all. So it's absolutely powerful, powerful. And I guess he probably waited until, 20 books later to be able to say, he's talking to you And when you say, am I one of these perfectly complete human beings? And he says, well, let's have a look. Do you do something and nothing happens? Do you not do something and something happens? Then you are. So I think this was just a very clear passages for us all. We don't have any questions, which is okay. But do give us feedback too, and your experiences about these kind of places.
Can I make a comment then? Something just come through to me when you were talking about the correlations and the 3 points of us being similar in terms of owning and worshipping and all of those things. I found a bit of a connection, or what occurred to me is Surah Al-Fatiha, when, it's like we think we own something, but then the Fatiha reminds us that he is the Malik. And then if we think that, we could be worshipped, or there's this worship element in us, then he reminds us that we worship him alone and only him. And then to be guided so that we can't make ourselves gods, if you want, because we're asking to be guided, and therefore we can't be gods. So I don't know, I think the Fatiha has like a useful way of grounding and connecting with the correlation, but being reminded that we aren't the one.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and then the Fatiha, I forgot to mention that's one of the twos. The verses that you read twice, once this way, once that way. And then the Surah, Ikhlas, that you read twice, once this way, once that way. And the Fatiha is a twice folded. It's Allah says, you say this, Allah says this. You say that, Allah says that. And so that twice folded nature is what the Fatiha is. And that twice folded is saying, is just as you said, that it's you are this and you're not that. But so that and the beauty of that, you have to see both of those completely. You can't say see, in a sense, the conventional way of looking at all of this, and I think in conventional way that many people look at in religions, Muslims especially, or also, is that we think that God is like me, but better. And see, that's a problem. It's a super problem, because I have to say God is exactly like me with whatever imperfections I have, and God is not at all like me. But if I say God is, better than me, and the transcendent is a little bit less transcendent, then that doesn't get us anywhere, and that's a real disaster. So we have to say that God is exactly me and exactly not me, and that's how we the correlation. In order to have love, we have to be correlated, and we have to be able to see each other, and to see each other, then we have to be something that brings that affinity, and that we have to then be indistinguishable from each other. And the way to be indistinguishable from each other is saying that here is the divine image which owns and which has all the names, but that entity, me, doesn't think that I'm God, or that I own, or that I have all the names. Yeah.
Well, Aisha seems to have turned on the faucet. We've got some more questions now.
Yeah, can I just say one verbally? Actually, I wanted to say because it relates to this. Just to clarify, when we say that God is exactly like me and He is exactly not like me, like the like and the not like, the he not he. Looking at it at a different level, isn't this the combining of the Allah and the Who together? So recognizing that Allah and Who are the same, one which is the whole, all-encompassing names, which includes all the forms, all the attributes, everything. One which is nothing is like Him, the absolute Who, no form, no whatsoever, and putting it together. So seeing the same reality on the divine realm,
right?
The like me and not like me, up there is the Allah and the Who.
Right. Yeah, and that's why. So that who is Allah? So that God testifies and His angels that who is Allah? Annahu Allah alladhi la ilaha illa hu. And so that's then, as you say, the combining. So you take the who and the Allah and they combine as who is the Allah? Who is there is no God but who? Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
So a question about the relationship between a lighting place, map, Sūrah, and musical scales. And are musical scales also infinite bounded spaces?
Aha. Okay. So when you go to a place, well, that's the that sound can come through without mediation, and so that sound just comes without, can be processed by the hearing instead of by the brain, whereas words have the intermediary, and so they are processed, and they are intermediate instead of immediate. And so these alighting places are places, a map, which you could map out sounds and songs and symphonies and all of those. You can map them out as these are a certain scale, or these are certain, the way that all of the information will come to be processed. And so the scale, the maqam, is the skeleton or the template into which all sorts of different sounds will come, but they will have these different locations on the musical scale, just the way these places have different locations in the map, which is the surah. So yeah, so it's something to really extend the imagery and the sound all the way through. And this is, Ibn Arabi explains with the word Allahu. So Allahu, when it's written, when you write Allahu, you just write Allah and there's an H at the end with no U. So there's just Allah in writing. But in sound, you say Allahu. So the who is accessible through sound, but inaccessible through sight or through writing. And so this is how another way that Ibn Arabi leads us to see what vision and sound, how they are different. And it's shown through the writing itself. Writing that Allahu, that the who is invisible in the writing, visible, as it were, in the sound.
From what I'm getting of who, it's the divine breath, which is the source of the ongoing creation. Am I on the right track? Then again, Akbarianly speaking, who also at times sounds like the image. He made who unseen and seen.
Yeah, so who is the breath? Yes, and so it comes from here and it's invisible. It comes out and it's visible, but it's no longer the same invisible who. So because now it's been processed, modulated through the mouth. So the who that comes out is at once who, because it came from there, and it is who, and it is the breath. On the other hand, it isn't who, because now it's been modulated, and it's not the same as it was when it is in here. So it is and it isn't. So that's the imagery that you can take all the way with you. So then who, this breath that comes out, is at once first, and it's the last, and it's the outward, and it's the inward. So the who is moving through constantly. That's the play. That's the play that is happening in the creation, is the who is coming out. And the same way the who then is the nafs, is the breath then, and the soul. And the soul is always created from a single soul. And then all of us are coming from the single soul. But do you see that because you can't break a sphere to get to the inside, because the thing that you break now has an outside and an inside, the same way we are all coming from a one entity, and we are one entity.
I'm piggybacking on what you just said. It does come to me that it's more of a process. The who is more of the process.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's not the fixed point, or it's coming from the fixed point. Of course, the Allah, the one.
Right.
But it's referring to the process.
Right, right. And that's why Ibn Arabi is forever shaking us so that we don't sit in one place, because everything is moving. It's all a process, as you say, it's dynamic. And so there's no fixed thing. So you don't say this fixed thing is that fixed thing. It's moving at all times. And so the very process of writing is creating all of these things. And then what's written has a verbal or as an oral, hearing dimension, and it has a seeing dimension, but it's always moving. It's never fixed, and so that's why Ibn Arabi keeps telling us the only place to stay for 3 days or 3 breaths is confusion, or I don't know, and that's the place to stay for 3 days. Everything else is he's trying to move us away from fixing, and so process is the word, yeah. And so I'm trying to even do things to make English sound more process oriented, I guess you say, becoming instead of to be. So kun fayakun is just be and it is, but really it's be and it becomes, and so it's becoming, and then right before it is, it dies and then becomes again. so it never is solid, and that's Ibn Arabi saying that no thing is for 2 moments. There's nothing that stays fixed for 2 moments. It becomes in the first moment, then it's gone. And then the second moment, it becomes, and before it is, it's gone. And then it becomes, and before it is, it's gone. And so that's how it works.
Can you give us a list of the surahs we recite in 2s?
All of them can be recited in 2s. Think about the Alif Lam Mim, think about Hamim, think the golden letters. The Surah Ikhlas is recited twice, once for the one behind all of the divine names and the one who was taught all of the divine names. Fatiha is twofold, is a twice 7, so that each of the 7 verses has us speaking and then Allah responding, like that. And then the Laysa Kamithli Shay'un is read twice because the particle ka is either intensive, there is really nothing like him, or it's a relative pronoun. The one which is like him, there is nothing like him. So, and then we can do that. Ibn Arabi will take, in a sense, all of these words and sentences, the basmala and others, and read it twice, and read it one way, and another way another time. Like at the end of the basmala, Rahim. So Rahim, who is Rahim? Is it Allah? Is it Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is it both? So once this way, once this way. So that's just the whole story of Quran, is that you read twice. Yeah.
The guest will recount stories about what has been learned. Can you say more about how and where and in what forms these stories are recounted?
Yeah, so these stories will be recounted in your own language, just the same way that when Allah says that the night belongs to me. So when I come to you at night, I will tell you what the Quran is saying in your own language. I will tell you what I meant by this verse. And then for Ibn Arabi, in this particular description of Abu Sa'id, he said he met him, and Abu Sa'id taught him this teaching that I recognize the true by the confluence and the bringing together of the opposites. Ibn Arabi's perhaps main teacher was the one who passed away before he could meet him, Abu Madian. So Abu Madian was someone that he met, and he much of what he was taught by Abu Madian in this other world when he went to these alighting places.
Such questions always takes me to the poet Robert Browning, referring to music as the closest creation to the divine process of creating. Yeah, and just a few days ago, I was looking at one of my favorite movies from way back, Koyaanis Qatsi, which is the Godfrey Reggio. He did the 3 movies and then Visitors. And in that one, he has, it just went out of my head, the composer. And the composer was saying that and the director, Godfrey Reggio, was saying that what I want to do with these visual movies is to have it have a visceral effect on you, to reach you directly, not be processed by the brain and the intellect. And he said, and then the sound
Philip Glass, thank you, Martha. Philip Glass. So Philip Glass was saying, and that's the beauty of music, sound. It comes straight to you and it does what it's supposed to do without you putting a barrier there and interpreting it. So you don't listen metaphorically. You get it. And that's, and Ibn Arabi says, the vision and sight, they only combine in this other world. They do not combine here. So when we read the Ilahi and sing it at the same time, that's when we jump into this other world, into this other alighting place. And because the brain is taking metaphorically the words, which are its realm is those things which I can take metaphorically. And the body is taking the sound and learning through the bodily ways. And so this is how we combine that by reading and singing. So I encourage you to keep going, looking at all of that. And Philip Glass, yeah. And so he has so much wonderful things to say about the philosophy of sound. Beautiful.
Okay. Will this dream of the definition of God make sense and help understanding him? A voice in the lucid dream told me that God is the highest level of awareness and consciousness. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this highest level of awareness and consciousness, that's beautiful, but what it's saying is that if I understand partially what's happening, that's a partial understanding. If I understand fully, completely, that what I am seeing is divine, is the divine, then that's where I want to be, where I can see exactly, I see this hand and I see that God moved this hand. When I see someone who God is acting from behind, and I see there's God acting from behind, that's where I want to be. And I don't want to be, oh, that's a pious person doing a nice thing. That's very incomplete and partial.
You had made the observation that in these alights of the Surahs, Ibn Arabi moves away from the language-based interpretation. How do you see the connection between the descriptions of the manzil in the Surah and the words of the Surah? For example, in the verse, thank you, Ilafahim, the voyage of the winter and the voyage of the summer.
Yeah, what's so beautiful is that, and remember I told you, when I first came into these places, I kept saying, so how am I going to translate, write down what Ibn Arabi is doing in these chapters, in the 114 chapters? And I said, why isn't he doing a close analysis of the surah, which you take a word, you parse it, you say what its grammar is, what its multiple meanings are, what its history is, the asbab an-nuzul, what brought it down, the reasons, all of these things. And he does none of that. He does that elsewhere in the Futuhat, but not here. Here he says, here's an alighting place. You hear this verse, and by God's grace, you go to that place, and you don't go through parsing or through brain or through intellect. You go some other way. You go the other way. And this is the way that transcends language. It goes, and so when you come back from it, you speak about it in your language because you're taking the meaning and putting it into your language. And so it doesn't go language meaning language. It goes no language meaning back to language. And so this is why you not necessarily, if you're reading simply the text, you won't know which of these chapters is which of the surahs of the Quran, because he's not saying, this, that. He is saying this verse is enclosing an area. If you go to that area, you will see the verse being revealed the same way that it was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. And so when you see that, that's the special face in every being, which is facing and confronting the divine, the first place.
In some tariqas, the Ikhlas is recited 3 times. Is it up to the Grand Sheikh of the lineage to decide to add one more?
I don't know about all of that. I mean, sort of the one of the answers to the 3 is that that throughout the Quran, there are parts of Quran which, when recited or make up a certain portion of the entire Quran. And so when you recite this one 10 times or this one 3 times, it's the equivalent of reciting the entire Quran. And then that's all part of the art or the guidance of knowing what to do when you are preparing yourself with the Quran, and that all of the Quran will be is in the Basmala and the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and all of that is in the Ba, and all of that is the Nukta. And so when you see this, you begin to see these are all dimensional facets that are showing the whole in something that is down all the way down to the dot of the Ba. And again, the dot of the Ba has not very much, I would think, linguistic sense. You can't take the Ba, which is a pixel on the page or a single sound bite, and start breaking it down and saying, I want to see where the rest of the Bismillah is in, and the Bismillah, I'm going to break it down to see where the Quran is in it. What we're hearing then is that it's a access point that takes us to that place. And so it's not, you can't get here, you can't get there from here. You have to move outside of the of language, move out of intellect, and then you have to be transported from here to there.
Just to comment that Philip Glass is the composer that I guess you were looking for before.
Yeah.
Many indigenous languages do not have a to be or not to be verb. Everything is becoming, shifting, and changing. Alhamdulillah, Eric Shuaib, thank you for including this in these translations.
Yeah, years ago, I'm always fascinated by language. So I was beginning to look at this whole idea of ises and how language deals with all of that. And Arabic itself really has no is. And so what you do when you say you put something up here, you put another noun next to it, and there's an is that links the two. And so there isn't any formal is. And so noun, and there actually is the is itself. And so, and then the idea of process versus reification. So we, English has to be, the poets have to do things with English, because you might say that typically the English becomes a business language, which they call pidgin language or business language. And so this business language is kind of bottom line, and especially in the US, bottom line is what you keep hearing. Just give me the bottom line. And so it's like, here's a reified box, and that's what we're talking about. And language has to break through that and say, it's not going to be that. And in semantics, we say, cow 1 is not cow 2, and we learn the word is not the thing. And so those are ways to help us understand how language works. And of course, that's what the poets, play with all the time, to find a way to give us meaning which doesn't get hijacked by the intellect.
Beautiful.
Good. Okay. Yeah, so Philip Glass, there you go. So that, because I'd never really remembered him saying that before, but that the sound goes directly, and that it doesn't go through all of this these filters, and in a sense, that's why that beautiful passage when Ibn Arabi is saying what God tells us is that when I made the day for you, do your stuff during the day, but I made the night for me. So when I come to see you and you're fast asleep, what lover doesn't wait up for the beloved to come visit? And then God says, and put away your recitation of the Quran, meaning that if you're reading the Quran and you're hearing about all these wonderful people and you're saying, oh, these wonderful people are so great, and you're hearing about all these horrible people and you say, oh, these horrible people are so bad, and you're hearing about the garden, it's so nice, and the fire, it's so bad, it's so hot, or so cold, then Ibn Arabi said that God says, you're not listening to me. you're doing your own thing. You're going to the garden, you're going to the fire, you're checking out how beautiful these people are, and you're seeing how bad these people are. You're missing me. So he says, put down the Quran and let me recite the Quran to you directly. So that's where we want to be. So, alhamdulillah. So thank you. It's so good to see you all.